about a challenge that I faced actually today in my business, and that is about projects not progressing without my involvement and having to feel like I'm spoon feeding or micromanaging in order to get things over the line and keep moving without me constantly providing support and input to my team. And I want to explain how we should be doing this and why in this instance that didn't work. And hopefully at the end of it, you're going to have a strategy that will allow you to get your team to be more independent in the way they work, to be more proactive in progressing projects without your involvement, and ultimately getting you the result you actually want from a project without you having to do all the thinking yourself. Okay, so this episode is going to be all about finding a way to get other people to do your work for you without your involvement when it's not just a simple task. We're now talking about a project where there's a goal you're working towards that you want to get implemented in your business. And you're trying to get your team, whether it's a virtual assistant or a whole bunch of people or whatever, to actually get on with this without having to keep on nagging you and asking you for the next step and the next step. Because ultimately what happens in my business anyway is that things just stagnate if people wait for me, because I'm busy, I'm doing all the high value stuff that I really enjoy doing, and people just don't get the input they need sometimes unless we've done all the things I'm about to tell you today. And so this all came from a task board review, as I do on a regular basis with my team when we have our weekly one-to-ones. And about once a month, I try to jump on their task board, have a look at any outstanding tasks and see, look, where are the bottlenecks? Are there any issues with priorities? And then looking at the stuff that's awaiting review. Often this is waiting for me to review it, and I haven't actually picked that up and done it. And just hold my hands up. That's just the way my brain works. And so what I spotted was a couple of projects on one of my staff's board that I had sort of handed over, in one case months ago, and then hopefully they were going to get progressed forward, but they just basically sat there and stagnated. And so the outcome of this is it was quite a eye-opening and quite a useful experience, for honest, because we've recently been looking at our project management, and it's actually something I talked about. One element of this is something I talked about in episode 35, which was about creating vision boards for projects. And the principle of that is absolutely brilliant. In quick summary, the idea is that when you start off a project, you actually create a formal vision board for the project, which outlines what you as the project leader, if you like, the implementer or the idea behind the project, that person, what they see the project actually being, and going through quite a systematic approach to looking at, look, is this in line with our company goals? Does it hit our targets? Is it in line with our values? Who's going to benefit from it, what the challenges it overcomes, what the benefits actually going to give them, what your initial thoughts are for the project, where you see this going, and then doing some initial sort of high-level phase planning. So what will phase one look like? Often that's a research element, and then phase two and phase three, and what you hope the end result will be, and how will you know if you've been successful. If you do all of those things, then the problems I faced today in this meeting wouldn't have ever happened. Or if I'd done those things, that this wouldn't have ever happened. And so we have this structure in place, but until recently, we've not been really dedicated in actually implementing it. So one of our actual goals for the next quarter's goals, I should say, is to formalize this, that every single project that we kick off has a formal structure that we follow in order to avoid these things stagnating because there's no clear direction. And in this case, I'll give you the example. So we hit a massive milestone in this podcast. We hit 30,000 downloads earlier this year. I think it was maybe June or July that this happened, maybe a little bit later. Maybe it was August, actually. And I said, look, we've got to celebrate this. We've got to tell people about this, that we've done this fantastic thing. You know, I'm really proud of the fact that the team have managed to keep this podcast promoted and get it out there and keep building our audience. And I wanted to celebrate it. And so we are going to celebrate this, but it's going to be a little bit delayed because I handed this over and said, look, we need to do this. You know, here's my vision for it. It was a really quick vision, though. It wasn't a formal planned vision. And I said, look, just go and figure out, go and ask our, we've got an agency that help us with some elements of our podcast. So go and ask them, they're a great source of knowledge about this. What would they do? And let's just get this done. And then I got busy and I didn't go back to it and I didn't provide the next step, and it just basically stagnated. And today, months later, I see it still sat there. We haven't done anything with it. And so my mentoring or my feedback to the person involved was that they'd done nothing wrong, actually. They'd done what they were asked to do, and then they were waiting for my input. And yeah, they probably could have pushed me a bit more on it. But had they done the key element, which we now are enforcing in our business, there wouldn't have been an issue. And that element is that if I hand over a project to somebody, or any of our managers hands over a project to somebody to work on, it's the responsibility of the team who are involved in actually implementing that project to ensure that they have a completed vision board done. And that will involve the thought leader for the project sitting down and actually either recording or actually writing down what the vision board should be, or completing the vision board, for that particular project. Because when the teams then got that, they'll know how to progress it forward. They don't need to come back and keep asking for the next step, the next step, the next step, because they know what the goal is. And so in this case, if we'd had that vision board in place, this person would have been able to use the research she did. And I looked at it today and I was like, literally the entire plan she's done. She's mapped it all out. It's ready to go. There will be a few bits that I need to do. Like I need to record some videos and a podcast and decide what incentive we're going to get for people for signing up for the podcast and all that sort of stuff. So there's still some elements that I'll need to actually add into that. But those are only tiny pieces of the puzzle, when most of the work is about actually, creating the copy and the posts and scheduling everything out and deciding how we're going to run the campaigns and all that sort of stuff. And all of that planning is actually in a high level done. But they were just waiting for me to sort of push it over the line and give the okay to go ahead with it. Had I done the vision board and planning ahead of schedule and had that been in place, they wouldn't have needed me, and therefore that project would have progressed. And this is just one of many examples where things stagnate and don't get pushed forward. And what the learning from this for me is really simple. I've probably made it very clear, is that by putting a little bit of time up front in planning the project, it means people can progress without your involvement. But just the nature of maybe it's just me, but me as a business owner, I sometimes forget to do that, and I cut corners and I shortcut, and I just get on with that, and it'll be all right. You know what you're doing, don't you? Get on with it. And the result is often never what I intend. And so the big lesson for the team, though, is that they have to push back and ask for that vision board. Otherwise, they're not allowed to actually start and get on with the project, and they've got to keep pushing back. And this is a lesson that I learned from a great book, which I've mentioned in previous podcasts, called It's Okay to Manage Your Boss. And so I got my team to read this book. And one of the key things in that book, the takeaways from that book, is that the staff members' responsibility is to ensure that they have everything they need in order to do great work. And if they don't, they have to go back and ask for that before they crack on with stuff. And it's their responsibility to make sure they've got it. Because that way, there isn't this confusion about what should happen next. There isn't them with misaligned goals or misaligned targets at the end, or that it's not clear what the actual benefits are going to be and why they're doing this. And if you put those things in place and enforce that before you let your team get on with stuff and make them responsible for making you give them the information they need, it means that projects can run far more fluidly, far more effectively, without you having to keep diving in. So that's my big take home for today, is to think seriously. If you've got stuff in your business and you're getting frustrated that your team isn't just getting on with stuff and you want to just throw stuff at them and just say, just do that. I haven't got time to think about it. I just want to get it done. And you're finding that is happening in your business, you need to empower your team to push back on you to give them the information they need to crack on without your involvement. And yet that does take a little bit of your effort, but minimal compared to the frustration and the time of undoing projects that have gone wrong because they didn't have a clear path and a clear vision, or the things that stagnate and never get done, like this in this example, where 70% of the hard brain work's being done. Now we're just at the last implementation stage, and it was literally just waiting for me to push it over the line. So there are many more examples I could go into, but hopefully that one illustrates this challenge and this frustration that I know is shared by many of my clients. And it's something that we have a very formalized system. As I said, now, if this happened today and this project was kicked off today, I hope this wouldn't have happened. This is, as I said, one that dates back quite a few months. And so we didn't have that structure in place then. And this is a really good, for me, motivation to make sure that this quarter we absolutely nail this part of our business, and that is the system for implementing projects. Because if we have the structure in place with the vision board and the planning and all the other parts of that system, it means that the team can crack on without my involvement or without the manager's involvement or the leader's involvement in order and then get stuff over and done, and therefore adding value to the business, rather than all these projects that get started go nowhere and it's just a drag on resources. Like, one of the reasons I think, like, for myself, that, you know, or I put it this way, that I know that the business will be further on, will be more progressed forward if we haven't started and stopped the hundreds of projects we have over the years, because we didn't really put the thought into the project before we just delegated out. You know, I've got an ADHD brain, so I come up with ideas like every minute of the day, and I'm constantly, and I've got a lot better at this, but I used to be like throwing new ideas every single meeting, and there'd be 10 new ideas for people to get on with and crack on with, and they just haven't got the time and resources to do it. So if you put this barrier in place, this planning stage before you go, you know, dive in headfirst and start delegating, crack on with this project or whatever, then it allows you to sense check it and give you some time to actually think, you know, is this actually what we should be doing right now? Is this in line with our agreed quarterly targets or our yearly targets? And if it is, then great. Well, do we even have the resources to do it now, or do we actually need to start this, you know, a couple of months from now? And the outcome of this, I'm just going to finish this off actually with a really good and insightful outcome of this particular project, which is about this promotional podcast, is that this may seem a lot of work for, you know, a one-off task, or we're just, you know, celebrating our 30,000 downloads. I wanted to do something fantastic for that. But actually, we are going to be celebrating milestones in this podcast, in other things that we do, whether it's our YouTube channel or whatever, like our social media, we will be celebrating major milestones going forward. So if we create a plan for this and thought, this is actually going to be a project that, yeah, okay, we're only going to celebrate our 30,000 downloads once, but then we might celebrate our 50,000 or 40,000, whatever. Or we might celebrate our 200th episode, or we might celebrate our, you know, 5 years or in the podcast, whatever it is. Like, we've got our structure that is basically how we go about this entire process from start to finish, that we can then reproduce or reuse going forward. So very rarely in business are there things that are totally one-off. Like, the variables change, and we teach us about having constant inputs and variable inputs, and the variables may change. Like, for example, the number of episodes downloaded we're actually celebrating, but the main structure behind the entire celebration process will ultimately be the same. We may improve it and tweak it, but the foundation of that will be the same every single time. So in this case, if we put that little bit of planning ahead, she would have got on with it. We would now have a nice system to be able to then roll out any celebration we do going forward in the future. We can add, you know, new knowledge to it and improve it, of course, but the foundation work would have been done, and therefore that would have been, you know, another tick in the box of systems that we've got nailed and, you know, in the bag. Sorry. All right, cool. That's it for today. I hope you found this useful. If you have, then please do share this with your friends and colleagues and anyone else you know would benefit from listening to this episode, all about empowering your team and getting them to actually have the knowledge and information needed to crack on with stuff without your involvement, which ultimately helps in the growth of your business and in the team having ownership and feeling that their work is valuable. And there's nothing worse, I'll finish with this, that I know from doing feedback sessions with my staff, the one thing they hate more than anything is the most demotivating thing they do is when they start a project, they get a certain amount of the way in, they put time and effort and energy into it, and then we don't do anything with that work. It's as if that was just a waste of their time, and it is a waste of their time and a waste of your resources if you don't see projects to the end and get them over the line. And this, I believe, is a fantastically simple but powerful way to make sure that doesn't happen in your business. Thanks very much. I'll see you next time.